Every year, 200 to 500,000 guns are smuggled from the U.S. into Mexico, in addition to countless millions of rounds of ammo. But in addition to that, a lot of guns are being smuggled from Mexico into the U.S., but a vast majority of the guns being smuggled across the Mexican border are going into Mexico. Now, when you hear numbers like 200 to 500,000 guns a year, it kind of really leaves you scratching your head saying, well, how's that even possible? Because what we have going on right now within the Supreme Court, within the Mexican government, within the United States government, is debates and arguments over who is really at fault for the fentanyl issue in the U.S., for the gun violence from the cartels in Mexico, and where are all these guns coming from? And ultimately, the Mexican government is pointing fingers at gun manufacturers like Smith & Wesson. The Supreme Court is pointing fingers at what they refer to as red flag stores, those stores selling massive straw purchases, knowing that they're probably going to Mexico. And nobody's really pointing the finger at the border or the cartels. And that's the problem, other than the United States government, who is saying that they're a terrorist organization, that the fentanyl issue is really their fault. So how are the guns getting into Mexico? Well, as it turns out, when you look at the sheer volume of gun seizures at the Mexican border from the United States, from the Department of Homeland Security, from ICE agents, that sort of thing, what they're finding is that every single time it is a Mexican citizen. Give you an example. In January, one car, it was an SUV, was stopped at the Mexico border going from the United States into Mexico, and they noticed that the luggage rack on top was clearly tampered with. So upon x-raying that vehicle, what they found was there was something hidden in the roof of that vehicle, and it turned out it was 63 firearms, along with thousands of rounds of ammo, all just in the lining of the roof of one SUV. So in this particular case, what you have is you have a guy who is a Mexican citizen smuggling guns through the roof of a car in small numbers in this particular case. And his target was the Mexican cartels. So really, if you're wondering who's at blame for the gun smuggling, it's not Smith & Wesson. It is definitely Mexican citizens. If you're wondering who's responsible for the gun violence in Mexico, it is definitely the Mexican cartels. It is a culture of extreme gun violence that has nothing to do with Smith & Wesson. If you're wondering who's responsible for the fentanyl going from Mexico to the U.S., again, it's the Mexican cartels, in addition to Mexican citizens doing the smuggling back and forth. And they're bringing fentanyl one direction and guns and ammo the other direction. It's not that complicated, ladies and gentlemen. It's not Smith & Wesson's fault. It's definitely not your fault or my fault. It is 100% the fault of the Mexican cartels and the Mexican citizens who are doing the smuggling. We need to just really quit kind of pointing fingers where fingers don't belong to be pointed. 500,000 guns per year is a big number. And how are they getting through? Well, about 60 at a time, lined in roofs of cars. That's how it's getting through. Driven by Mexican citizens, with the Mexican cartels as their primary target of receiving those firearms. So it's not a mystery how this is playing out. This is really how it's playing out. And a lot of times we just continue to blame this person or that person or these guys or those guys. Just point the blame where it belongs. It's the Mexican cartels that are doing all of this. So there you go, man. Any thoughts or insight on any of this, definitely put it below. I do want to take a moment and thank those of you who are patrons of this channel. Thank you for supporting this channel through Patreon. We could not do this without you. If you feel called to support this channel to Patreon, that link is below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests. So please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.